friends, let us now learn about a topic in ENT, which is epistaxis. So what is epistaxis? Epistaxis generally means nose bleeding. So in the nose bleeding, what is the most common site of epistaxis? The most common site of epistaxis is what is the most common site of epistaxis? It is Little's area is the most common site of epistaxis. So if you were asked what is the most common site of epistaxis in children, the most common site of epistaxis in children is again Little's area, and in young adults also it is Little's area. So where is this Little's area actually located? It is located in the antero-inferior part of the nasal septum here. So let me draw this nasal septum again. So according to this nasal septum, so if you see, that is the nose, okay, which I have already drawn. So that is nose and the nasal septum, and you have, this is the sphenoid sinus, sorry, this is the frontal sinus, then this is the roof of the nose, this is the sphenoid sinus, and this is the floor of the nose, which is nothing but hard palate and soft palate. So if you see here, this artery which you see here, this is anterior ethmoidal artery. So even in this diagram you can see this has anterior ethmoidal artery. Okay, then we have this artery which is called as sphenopalatine artery. This is anterior ethmoidal artery, this is sphenopalatine artery, this is the greater palatine artery. I'm even drawing the venous supply for them. So this is sphenopalatine artery. So the same artery which you see here, here it is here in this picture. Okay, this is sphenopalatine artery. Actually this sphenopalatine artery is also called as artery of epistaxis. So this sphenopalatine artery is called as artery of epistaxis, which is very important. So this is anterior ethmoidal artery, this is sphenopalatine artery, and this is the septal branch of greater palatine artery. Okay, this artery is septal branch of superior labial artery. The superior labial artery is in turn a branch of facial artery. Okay, so all these are the arteries of Little's area or Kesselbach's plexus. Okay, so now let us learn about the next plexus, which is called as Woodruff's plexus. So if you see in the Woodruff's plexus, first the location of Woodruff's plexus is present. Woodruff's plexus is present in the lateral nasal wall inferior to the posterior end of inferior turbinate. Okay, it is present in the posterior end of inferior turbinate. So in this Woodruff's plexus, so the major artery in the Woodruff's plexus is sphenopalatine artery. Okay, this sphenopalatine artery is the artery of both Woodruff's plexus, sorry, is the artery of both Woodruff's plexus and also the Little's area. That artery, sphenopalatine artery, is common for both Little's area and Woodruff's plexus. So again the same diagram of nose, and in the nose if you see here mainly the sphenopalatine artery. So this artery is called as sphenopalatine artery. Okay, and we also have posterior pharyngeal artery. So we have sphenopalatine artery and posterior pharyngeal artery. Those are the turbinates. Okay, so this plexus which you see, this is called as Woodruff's plexus. Okay, that is sphenopalatine artery. This is, and this is greater palatine artery. Sorry, posterior pharyngeal artery. I'm sorry, this is the posterior pharyngeal artery. Okay, so once we have learned about the epistaxis, now let us first see this diagram also, the same diagram, but I am just showing you this diagram so that you will understand it better. So this is the Kesselbach's plexus. You have anterior ethmoidal artery, posterior ethmoidal artery, this is the sphenopalatine artery. All these will combine together to form Kesselbach's plexus. Then let me show Woodruff's plexus also once. So this is the Kesselbach's plexus. which is present in the antero, this is anterior part and inferior part. So it is present in antero inferior part of septum, and this which you are seeing here, this is mainly the Woodruff's plexus. This is the Woodruff's plexus which is present. Okay, this is present in the posterior end of the turbinate. Okay, now once having learned about the Little's area and the Kesselbeck's plexus, now let us learn about one more area which is also present, which is called as Brown's area. You will see that even from this Brown's area, there is bleeding can occur, epistaxis can occur. This Brown's area is located at a part in the nasal septum. Then you will also see venular bleeding from the retrocolumnar vein. Actually, this retrocolumnar vein is the most common site of bleeding in young people. This is the most common site of bleeding in young people. Young people means the age group between 35 years. So once we have learned about the different areas, now let us learn about the types of epistaxis. Epistaxis is divided into two types. One anterior epistaxis, next posterior epistaxis. Then in the anterior epistaxis, the source is anterior to the pyriform aperture. The source is anterior to the pyriform aperture. What is posterior epistaxis? The source is posterior to the pyriform aperture. It is posterior to the pyriform aperture. So it can be from the posterior part of lateral wall, it can be from the posterior part of septum, or it can be from the posterior part of nasal floor bleeding. Okay, so if you see, let me show you this here. If you see here, this part, here there will be pyriform sinus here, okay, which is a part of larynx. So at the pyriform aperture, so mostly you can say that this posterior part of the septum, posterior part of the nasal floor, septum, and the posterior part of the lateral wall, all this will cause posterior bleeding. Anterior is anterior to the pyriform aperture. So here mainly the Kesselbach's plexus come to the anterior part of bleeding. Then there is one more classification of this epistaxis. So that is called as two types, which is we have childhood epistaxis and next we have adult epistaxis. So in childhood epistaxis, it is less than, age is less than 16 years in childhood epistaxis, and in adult it is more than 16 years. There is one more type based on cause. It can be divided into primary epistaxis, in which 70 to 80% of the cases it is idiopathic. We have secondary epistaxis where the causes are trauma, surgery, overdose of anticoagulants. So all these are the types of epistaxis. Now once we have learned about the types of epistaxis, we will learn few differences between the anterior epistaxis and posterior epistaxis. If you see anterior epistaxis, it is mild. Actually, this is the most common type of epistaxis is anterior epistaxis, least common being posterior epistaxis. From anterior epistaxis, the blood flow of anterior epistaxis, it flows out from the front of the nose, whereas blood from the posterior epistaxis flows back of the throat. So blood in the posterior epistaxis flows back of the throat. So the site, if you see, anterior epistaxis is the Little's area. Posterior epistaxis, most common site being the posterior superior part is most common. Then age group, anterior epistaxis is most common in children and young adults, whereas posterior epistaxis occurs in age group more than 40 years. Then what is the cause of anterior epistaxis? Trauma is the major cause of anterior epistaxis, whereas posterior epistaxis major causes, it can be spontaneous, or here you can see it can be due to hypertension or atherosclerosis. Now if you see one thing, this is the anterior epistaxis which is due to the Little's plexus, and when there is anterior epistaxis, blood flows through the nose, whereas when there is posterior epistaxis, blood flows to the back of the throat like this. Okay, next. So if you see, anterior epistaxis is mild, whereas posterior epistaxis is severe. So because posterior epistaxis is severe, hospitalization is important. So now let us first learn about the epistaxis in children. We will learn about epistaxis in children and adults also. So first we will learn about epistaxis in children. So if you see in the epistaxis in children, there are many one-liners, remember. Okay, so epistaxis in children is rare in children less than 2 years of age. It is most common in between 3 to 8 years. Then this epistaxis is most common in winter due to increased upper respiratory tract infection or drying effect. Then the most common site of this is anterior part of nasal septum is most common, that is Kesselbach's area, or also called Little's area, is most common because nasal mucosa is thin and exposed to dry air currents in this area. So because it is thin and exposed to dry air currents, this is the most common site. So most common site in the anterior part of the nasal septum is Little's area. What is the most common cause? Most common cause is idiopathic, followed by digital trauma or nose pricking in the Little's area due to crusting. So this is about the most common cause of epistaxis. Then if you see unilateral epistaxis. Unilateral epistaxis, if there is any unilateral epistaxis, then in children always rule out foreign body. Then what are the causes of recurrent epistaxis in children? The causes of recurrent epistaxis in children are, can be allergic rhinitis, then we have hemorrhagic disease, retained nasal foreign body, then hemorrhagic disease. In the hemorrhagic disease, it can be due to idiopathic thrombocytopenic purpura or von Willebrand disease. Then in angiofibroma, there is increased blood vessels, okay, that can also lead to epistaxis. Then we have vascular abnormalities, nasal meiosis. In nasal meiosis, there is more, worms which are present, thus leading to epistaxis. Use of nasal sprays, especially intranasal steroid sprays. This can cause rhinitis medicamentosa, leading to crust formation, thus causing recurrent epistaxis. Then it can be due to vascular abnormalities, especially vascular abnormalities are AV valve malformation, arteriovenous malformation, or hemangioma. In all these, because of vascular fragility, there is increased chances of recurrent epistaxis. Then if we see, there is adult recurrent epistaxis also. What are the causes of adult recurrent epistaxis? The most common cause of adult recurrent epistaxis is secondary causes. Then it can also occur due to coagulopathies. The cause of coagulopathies is liver disease or kidney disease or leukemia or myelosuppression. So all these are the causes of coagulopathies. Then it can be due to trauma or post surgery, or if the patient is on warfarin. Then what are the causes? Other causes, tumors, especially juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma. Any boy, adolescent boy, 14 years boy with nasal bleeding, recurrent nasal bleeding, always suspect this juvenile nasopharyngeal angiofibroma and do the anterior rhinoscopy. You will see those vascularity. Okay, then it can also occur due to hemangiopericystoma. Then we have hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. We will learn about it in a minute. Then what is the most common cause of epistaxis in adults? Most common cause of epistaxis in adults is hypertension. What is the most common site of epistaxis in adults? it is Woodruff's plexus. So it's obviously almost opposite to the tough children, because in children it is Kesselbeck's plexus, whereas in adults it is Woodruff's plexus. Now let us learn about the treatment of epistaxis. How are you going to treat it? So, in the treatment of epistaxis, first we will have to do a first aid. Whenever a person or a patient comes to you, you will have to do first aid. So, in the first aid, we have to ask him to pinch the nose. Okay, that is called as nose pinching. So, if you see in the nose pinching, we have a method which is called as Trotter's method. So, in the Trotter's method, you will have to ask the person to sit with a cork between the two teeth, and you will have to allow him to bleed, okay, till he becomes hypotensive. So the thing is, you will have to ask him to close his mouth. So I'll just show you. See, in this picture which you have seen here in this picture, here in this PDF, this is the way that they sit, the person will sit and they lean forward. So if you see, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, if you see, the person will sit here. Okay, once he sits here on the chair and he tries to close his nose and opens his mouth, so he will have to breathe through the mouth and pinch the nostril. So once he pinches the nostril, with the pressure effect, the bleeding will stop. So that is Trotter's method. And then there is one more method. You will have to ask him to apply an ice cold water to the face or head. When he applies the ice cold water to the face or head, this will cause vasoconstriction and thus decreases bleeding. Then what about the treatment in hospital? In the hospital, first you will have to ask him to sedate. After giving sedatives, you will have to give pithidine, which decreases anxiety. Then we can do anterior nasal packing. So in the anterior nasal packing, the nose is packed with a rubber gauze. Just see. So this is the nose. Okay, I'm just drawing the nose. Okay, this is the teeth. This is the lip, upper lip, teeth, hard palate, then soft palate. Okay, then this is the frontal sinus, roof of the nose. This is sphenoid sinus. Okay, then so through the anterior part, see, through the anterior part of the nose, we will just pass the rubber gauze which is soaked in neosporin antiseptic cream for 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so if you see, this nose is packed using a rubber gauze soaked in neosporin antiseptic cream for 24 to 48 hours. Okay, so if you see this diagram here, this is anterior nasal packing, where through the nose, anterior part of the nose, we will pass these gauze pieces which are soaked in antibiotic cream. If this neosporin antibiotic cream is not available, then we can use alternative, that is Merosil packs can be used. Then you have one more technique which is called as balloon tamponade. Actually, this balloon tamponade is alternative to nasal packing. Okay, so here in this balloon tamponade, you have an airway tube. I'll just draw it so that you will understand. So this tube, first tube is airway tube, which is connected to posterior balloon. This is posterior balloon, which is in turn connected to anterior balloon. Then we have two branches, and these are side ports. So this is side port. Okay, so this is the balloon tamponade. I'm labeling the parts. That is airway tube. Then we have posterior balloon, and we also have one more which is anterior balloon, and then we have side ports. Okay, so this is about balloon tamponade. Next we have The next important, which is posterior nasal packing. So in the posterior nasal packing, we will, how are you going to do this posterior nasal packing? See, first you will, here in this PDF, see, first you will pass a nasal tube, okay, through with the help of threads, and then through this posteriorly, through the posterior opening, you will pass the gauze piece, and then you will pack it. So that is posterior nasal packing. So this is the picture, like this you will pack. So what are the side effects are important, especially posterior nasal packing causes cardiovascular side effects, which are pulmonary hypertension. It can cause cor pulmonale, sleep apnea. Okay, next. Next about vessel ligation. If still after anterior and posterior nasal packing, if it does not, control, then we will have to do this vessel ligation in uncontrollable bleeds. So in this, you will have to do vessel ligation. The most common vessel which is ligated here, the most common vessel which is ligated here is external carotid artery ligation is most commonly done. So this is the operation of choice, especially in elderly and debilitated patients in anterior epistaxis. Then what are the, so this is how, so you can even see here, this is the external carotid artery, and you will have to ligate here. What are the indications of this external carotid artery ligation? Indications are bleeding from external carotid artery when all the other measures are failed. Mostly when all the other measures like anterior and posterior nasal packing does not work, then you will have to do this external carotid artery ligation. The site is, you will have to ligate it above the origin of superior thyroid artery. So you will have to see where the superior thyroid artery is, and then you will have to ligate there. Then we have one more ligation which is called as, we can also do maxillary artery ligation. So this maxillary artery ligation is mainly performed in case of posterior bleeds. Okay, in the case of posterior bleeds, this maxillary artery ligation is mainly performed in pterygopalatine fossa by Caldwell Look approach. So it is performed in pterygopalatine fossa in Caldwell Look approach. Then we have to see what is the ligation method of choice. See, we have seen the two types, okay, but these are not ligation methods of choice. But the ligation method of choice, if you see, the ligation method of choice is, we have sphenopalatine artery ligation through transnasal endoscopy. So that is called as transnasal endoscopic sphenopalatine artery ligation, which is also called as TESPEL. So if you see here, I'm sorry, okay, that is TESPEL. So this is the picture which you see here. You will ligate transnasally you will put an endoscope and ligate this sphenopalatine artery ligation. It is most important. Then you have one more which is called as anterior and posterior ethmoidal artery ligation, can also be done between the inner canthus of eye and midline of the nose. Through the inner canthus of eye and midline of nose, with that you will have to ligate the anterior sphenoidal artery. Then after this we have one more thing which is called as hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. Then we have to see about hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. So this hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia, in this you see telangiectatic vessels which are present in the anterior part of nasal septum, thus causing, this will cause recurrent episodes of profuse bleeding. Okay, the treatment of this hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia is KTP or NDAG laser can be used, and you can do septodermoplasty also. So this is about the hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. So let me just show you the pictures of this. So this is the anterior wall of the nose. Through anterior rhinoscopy you can see some telangiectatic vessels which are present. Okay, so in hereditary telangiectasia, you will also see the telangiectatic vessels in the lips. See, in the lips, okay, and also on the tongue. So this is about the hereditary hemorrhagic telangiectasia. You can see here. Okay, so this is about completely about epistaxis. Thank you guys for watching my lecture. Thank you.